Hey guys, Naders here, and I have a really interesting character for today's video. I've seen a lot of people request Rick Grimes from MultiVersus, and as a fan of The Walking Dead, I'd absolutely love that. But the sad part is, I'm not sure how likely he would be due to him not being owned by Warner. I think the only way we could see good old Grimes is if player first gets Walter White in the game. Then, after Walter, they may go for other AMC properties such as The Walking Dead. But what about Warner property? Who is the Warner equivalent of Rick Grimes? Well, I believe that would be Dr. Robert Neville. For those unfamiliar with the character, Neville comes from a movie called I Am Legend. It's a movie where a virus has wiped out nearly all of humanity as a whole. Neville believes that he is the last person alive, and the only thing keeping him sane is his dog Samantha. I think there are a lot of similarities between Grimes and Neville, but they are two very different characters. I Am Legend was released in 2007, but its production actually began in 1995, 12 years earlier. The movie is based on a novel with the same name and has been owned by Warner ever since 1970. So, Neville is Warner property, which definitely does help his chances of getting into MultiVersus. There actually is a second movie that is supposedly currently in development, so if MultiVersus is still alive and thriving when that movie comes out, maybe that's when we could see Neville getting in. But if we are just limiting ourselves to the first movie, what could his moveset look like? Well, that's what I'd like to try to accomplish in this video. Just a warning, there will be spoilers in this video. I'll try not to spoil a ton, but if you have any interest in watching the movie at all, I'd recommend watching it before this video. So, from here on out, there will be spoilers, and that is your warning. Normally, I would go into why I chose Neville over other characters from the series. It's what I did with Mumford in my first video like this, and what I did with Bingo last week. But the thing is, Neville is really the only option for a character from this movie. There are two other characters who appear towards the end of the movie, but they don't really have enough screen time for a moveset to be made. And honestly, I actually really struggled to make a moveset for Neville himself. The way I come up with movesets is by watching the movie for the first time and deciding if I like it enough to dedicate my time into coming up with a whole moveset for a character. It just so happens that I really like this movie, so I knew from the beginning that I wanted to create a video on Neville. Then I go back and watch the movie again. This time I look at it from a moveset perspective. If I see anything that might work as a moveset, I write it down on a piece of paper. Then, once that is finished, I try to piece together a moveset. For Neville, he had a lot of good moveset ideas, but it was hard because I had 3 things that could work as a forward special, but minimal things for a down special. It's stuff like that that makes these videos difficult. But, that being said, I did come up with a moveset for Neville, and I think he could be a really fun character. Before I go into his moveset, I will quickly cover his gimmick. For the whole movie, the whole premise is that you don't want to be out at nighttime. This is when the Dark Seekers come out, which will want to kill you. So I had a thought that could work as an interesting gimmick. I'm not sure if people will be a big fan of it, and it definitely isn't needed, but I thought it would be interesting. I think that when Neville spawns in, a timer should be started. After a certain amount of time goes by, Neville's watch will start beeping. In the movie, the beeping tells Neville that it is almost nighttime and he has to return home. I think that the devs could make the background of each stage get a night mode. When Neville's watch starts to beep, it would begin turning nighttime. The background of the stage will begin turning dark, and this is when Neville has to start fighting for his life. When this happens, Neville will start dealing more damage to his opponents. Now, I can foresee some people not liking this mechanic because it would probably make Neville be a really campy character. So maybe to balance it a bit and help Neville's opponents out, maybe the opponents could have a bit more knockback or something on their moves. This makes it not completely awful for opponents at nighttime. I think some people might hate this mechanic, and some people might find it really cool. I think it's a good way of making Neville feel character accurate and could be a very unique mechanic for a platform fighter. Some people may look at this and say it would be a ton of work for devs, which it definitely wouldn't be simple, but I think back to Steve and Smash. The devs for Smash had to change every single stage to allow for Steve's blocks to work. I don't think a nighttime mode would be nearly as difficult as that. I think it would actually be pretty feasible. But with his gimmick out of the way, let's get into his moveset. I'll first go over his dash attack, and then I will get into his attacks, followed by his specials. For Neville's dash attack, he would continue running forward, but with a grenade in his hand. Then he would clumsily drop the grenade. It would then roll forward ahead of him and blow up. Neville has been seen with a grenade in the movie, and I think it would definitely be used in his moveset somehow. I think this would work as an interesting dash attack and would give Neville some range. Now we can get into his attacks. There are two types of attacks, aerial ones and grounded ones. I'll first go over his grounded attacks. For Neville's neutral ground, he would release an infected rat, which would then target the closest opponent and start attacking them. In the movie, Neville is seen testing some cures on infected rats. I think he could use these rats to his advantage. I think that he should only be able to spawn one rat at a time, and the rats wouldn't deal a ton of damage, just be a little more annoying. For Neville's forward ground, he would swing a golf club forward. I think that when Neville spawns in, he should start with around 5 golf balls per stock. When he uses his forward ground, it will hit a golf ball forward. The golf ball will fly with a certain angle and hit opponents, but it also can be used as a close-ranged move. The golf club swinging will also have a hitbox. Once you run out of golf balls, Neville will swing the golf club by itself. The club will still do a decent amount of damage, but due to the golf ball being so small, it would deal a pretty large amount of damage compared to the golf club. This comes from a scene in the movie where Neville is playing golf on top of an airplane. For Neville's upground, he would jab a knife upward. It's a simple yet effective move. Neville has been seen using a knife when cutting himself down from a trap. So, because of this, we know that he does carry a knife on him, which he should be able to use in MultiVersus. For Neville's downground, he would start pouring a substance onto the stage. The movie never really says what this substance is, but for MultiVersus, I think it could have a fun use. I think Neville could pour this substance onto a certain section of the stage, and it would stay there for a bit before drying. If an opponent walks or runs onto the substance, they will slip and not be able to control their character for a second or two, because they have to get back up. This would allow Neville to come and damage them before they regain control of their character. You can also stand at the edge of the stage and try to pour the substance onto players while they are recovering. And that is it for his grounded attacks. Now it's time to go into his aerial ones. For Neville's neutral air, he would jab forward with a screwdriver. He uses a screwdriver as a weapon in the movie, and I think it could be used in MultiVersus. Again, it's a simple move, but it gets the job done. For Neville's forward air, he would whip a plate forward. In the movie, he loses his temper and throws a plate. I think he could easily do this in MultiVersus, having a plate shatter and damage the opponent when it hits. The plate would be affected by gravity, so it would start to fall after Neville throws it. For Neville's up air, he would fire a handgun upward. The bullet wouldn't go very far, but would deal a decent amount of damage if it hits an opponent. Neville has been seen with a handgun a couple times in the movie, so I figured it would work well as a move. For Neville's down air, he would jab the stock of his gun downward. He's seen knocking a Darkseeker out with the stock of his gun, he just does it forward instead of downward. I think it would work fine to have him jab it downward instead of forward, and it could be a fun move. And that is it for Neville's attacks. They are all fairly simple, but definitely effective. His specials are a little more unique, all except his neutral ground. For Neville's neutral ground, he would fire a gun forward. He uses this gun quite a bit in the movie, and for good reason. I'd imagine that if I were in an apocalypse, I would also probably be using a gun to defend myself. Plus, this move also has a different use, which I will get into in a little bit. For Neville's forward ground, he would throw a tennis ball forward. Then his dog Sam would run after it. The ball could hit a player, which will cause Sam to then run into the player and deal damage. It would still be possible to get hit by the tennis ball but still be avoided by Sam, but it would be pretty difficult to do so. Neville's upground is where things get really interesting. I usually try to make characters' up specials be recovery moves, and it was hard for me to come up with a recovery move for Neville, but I did however come up with something. For Neville's upground, a rope would drop from out of the top of the blast zone. It would then capture Neville and lift him upwards. If, while going up, Neville hits an opponent, the opponent will take damage. If, however, the move is not cancelled in time, the rope will pull him up into the blast zone and kill him. Once the move is cancelled, Neville is still left dangling from the rope. In order for him to be released, his up attack needs to be pressed to cut himself off of the rope. If you remember, his up attack is him jabbing a knife upwards, so this makes sense. I think this would be a really interesting move, and I try to balance it out so it's not just an OP move that allows Neville to escape everything. It is also fairly risky because it leaves Neville open to attacks while dangling from the rope. I think it's a very interesting concept, and as far as I know, not something that we've seen before in a platform fighter. For Neville's down ground, he would place a propane tank down. The propane tank would stay there on a timer. Neville then can shoot at it with his neutral special and blow it up. This idea comes from a scene where Neville shoots at a propane tank to hurt a Darkseeker. I think it's a fun idea, and again, it makes Neville feel more character accurate. Most of Neville's aerial specials are the same. In fact, all of them are except for his forward air. His forward air is very similar to Tom and Jerry's. Neville is seen with a fishing pole in his movie, and I think it could work differently to Tom and Jerry's move. I always thought that if an opponent got hit by the hook, Tom should be able to reel them in. However, if they get hit by the hook, they just take damage. So I think Neville's pole can do what Tom and Jerry's didn't. I think this move could lead into combos and could allow players to have some fun coming up with ideas on how to use it. So again, if the hook hits a player, then Neville would be able to reel them in towards him. All the other moves work the same as the grounded one, but for his down air, the propane tank would fall onto the stage or into the blast zone. It could hit and spike opponents if the opponents are above the blast zone when they get hit by the propane tank. And that is it for Neville's moveset. I had to get a bit creative, and it actually was fairly difficult. I really did just want to make a moveset for him though, and I am happy with what I created. I think that Neville would be a really fun character and would be a lot of fun to play. Usually at the end here I will talk about some other stuff like winning animations or costumes, and Neville does have some costume potential. He could wear his lab coat like he does in the movie, or perhaps just a blank white t-shirt. I think his default outfit should be the one where he is wearing his jacket and a gray shirt. I don't really have any ideas for his winning or losing animations, but I'm not gonna lie, I kind of forgot to be looking for them while watching the movie. My bad. I'm sure they can be pulled from the movie somewhere, but I really don't want to go back and watch the movie again just for 10 seconds of this video to be me saying what I think his winning animation should be. So, with that, I think we should probably wrap up the video here. I know it's a bit shorter and not as long as my other videos, and to be honest, I didn't really have as much time this week as I normally have. I just wanted to get this video out there, and I'm still happy with what I created. What do you think of the character choice? Do you think that Neville should be added into MultiVersus? Do you like the moveset I created? Have anything you'd like to add? Let me know down in the comments. Next week I will be putting out another video similar to this one, but with a different character. So if that sounds interesting, stay tuned. If you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing, and I will see you all next week.